Hello, I'm Josh Bagley, and this is my Human Resource Management interview. I had the opportunity of interviewing Charlotte Lemke, who has been at Scenic Living Communities for the past 15 years, and for the past 11 years she's been HR there. And she kind of started out as a clerk there, and so when she started out, all the departments, all the department heads did all their own hiring, firing, the onboarding and training process, and getting them integrated into the job and the culture of the job. And what she noticed was that there was a lot of inconsistencies throughout all the different departments. So Lori, who was the owner of the business, kind of approached her and said, "Hey, can you take over as HR and just kind of be the central figure for everybody to go through?" And so what she noticed through this is that a lot of the inconsistencies got a lot better. She felt like the business overall kind of ran smoother. So she's been there for the past 11 years and she loves it. So. What she kind of does is she does the new employee process like a lot of HR people do. She'll take part in an interview. She'll do a lot of background checks for healthcare background checks. She put a huge emphasis on this, that there's instead of just doing a typical drug test, you'll do child stuff, misdemeanors, a lot of other things like that. As you are working with elderly people, you want to make sure that you have the right people for the job. So she'll put a big emphasis on that, contacting references. And then she'll do a lot of introducing to the culture. So when I got on there, she'll do a tour of the facility. She'll talk to you about dress code, clocking in, clocking out, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate for that. And so she's kind of in charge of that and getting people really integrated into the culture of the business there. And then she does the actual training, not physically, but she gets you set up for it. So typically for healthcare, you have to watch around, or at least from the nursing home standpoint, you have to watch around 20 to 30 hours of video. And then you'll do about a week and a half of shadowing or on-the-job training while someone's watching you or you're watching them. And then you kind of get into the real gig, and so she's kind of in charge of that. And so talking to her, I want to know a little bit about the core problems that she has and how they move forward to solve those core problems. And one of the big things is employee turnover. She said there's a big lack of people that are actually willing to do the job. And for her, this is a big thing because, if you don't have people willing to do the job, that means they're wanting to quit and do something else. They don't think it's worth their time, and so for them, it's really hard to get people that will stick with it for a long time. And with that, also they have a lot of seasonal workers. So a lot of high school and college kids will work all summer for them, and there'll be plenty of staff, and all of a sudden fall will hit, and it's boom. Instead of having 5 people on the floor, it's we have 2 people trying to cover a 5-person job. So. That's a big thing for them. Also, people leaving before they actually start. So she has a lot of problems with people will come on, they'll do the interview process, they'll watch the 20 to 30 hours of videos, they'll go through all the training regimens, and by the time that it starts, they'll get on, they'll do their first day on their own, and they'll say, you know what, I don't really like this, so see ya. And at that point, it's like they have 60 to 70 hours logged in about a 2-week period, and it's like that's a lot of money for a business just to throw towards an employee that's not even going to stay there. So that's something that they have a huge problem with. It's a very costly expense. And another thing is overall work community. A lot of the higher ups are kind of pushing towards the people who are doing the basic jobs, and it's a really bad hierarchy, and there's not a lot of meshing there. Working with healthcare and everybody working towards the same mission and the same goal of providing the best care for these individuals. And when you have that kind of tension in the workplace and people kind of getting fired up, it's tough to essentially have a good working community. It's essentially everybody for themselves. And she said this is a huge problem in the healthcare, and it causes a lot of divide and a lot of pushing the bad responsibilities onto someone they don't like instead of kind of all working together. And so how do they solve, or how to solve these problems? And so this is something that I was interested in. I think not even just from an HR standpoint, but just from a business standpoint, knowing how these problems come up and what are you going to do to solve them. So the first thing is, we talked about in class, recruiting. Are you a semi-active recruiter, active recruiter, or a really passive recruiter? And they're a very active recruiter. They want as many employees as they can. And so how do they go about getting these employees? So the first thing they do is they do a lot of career fairs. They do a lot of calling guidance counselors at the local high school. They'll set up stands at colleges, and they'll do clinicals. So a lot of the CNAs and the nursings will do clinicals out there at the nursing home, and for them that's a good way to get them integrated into the system and say, hey, there's a potential job for you after you're done with your schooling, after you're done with your clinicals, and after you get that stuff. So it's a good way for them to get hands-on with their employees. And then social media presence. we didn't touch a lot about this in class, but she said they're pretty active on social media and really just posting job stuff, activities, just kind of getting people into the system or into the business and trying to kind of get them excited about working at Scenic Living. So she said it's a small thing that they're working on, but that's what they mainly do. And then in-services. We do a lot of in-services, and through these in-services, a lot of the times, Lori, who's the owner of the business, she'll do an in-service about, employee camaraderie or something like that, where people can actually express how they feel, take feedback, and then eventually, hopefully get that implemented into the system, and so they can have a smoother system, and people can kind of get their problems out there and essentially try to get them solved. And the last thing is pay and benefits. So they do a lot of pay raises, a lot of increases in pay. They kind of match this. They'll match other people, or they'll match other businesses in that certain area, and they'll continue to every 6 months do evaluations and continue to increase the pay. And they're hoping that this will help in employee turnover, and keep them a little bit more satisfied than just constantly sitting at the same wage and not really moving anywhere. A lot of people like to progress and essentially get more money, because for them it helps them personally, and I think it also helps them emotionally wise to say, okay, I can get up and do my job easier because I know that if I work hard and whatever, once I get my evaluation, essentially hopefully I can make more money. That's my interview. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it.